Hello, beautiful people. I'm Mariquita Solis, vegan empowerment coach, and I'm excited to welcome Aaron Abolitionist, Aaron Abolition.
That
um,
works too.
yes, he's an amazing musical genius, and he's here to share his harmony and good vibration with us, and tell us about his vegan experience. So, Aaron, well, first of all, everyone, thanks for watching, and please give StreamYard permission to use your name in the comments. I see Angela's here. And if you're watching from YouTube, please subscribe. So, um, Aaron, tell everybody about who you are and what you do.
Oh boy. Well, first of all, I just wanted to say thank you, Mariquita, for having me on your show. It's an honor to be here. I'm going to silence my phone since it's making noises. Yeah, so who am I? The eternal question. And the eternal answer, I don't know.
Who are you today?
Right. That is a valid question. Today I am I'm a working musician, although I just unfortunately got a job as a cinema host in a theater, very nice theater, great people. Having a little bit of a difficult time making the adjustment back into a world where somebody else is my boss after having run my own business as a music teacher and a performer for senior citizens at care homes for 5 years, and doing a little bit of composing on the side. These are my main pursuits. I compose, I teach, and I perform. Yeah.
I love that. I love working with the senior citizens. You know, that kind of stood out. So that's beautiful. Yeah, and I love listening to your music. I'm very hooked on that one. Now I don't know the name of it, but I kept playing it over and over. The one that says, "Forgive them, Father, for what they do." That.
Oh yeah, the future is vegan.
Yeah, the future is vegan. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I was listening to that over and over, watching it on YouTube, and.
Well, that's a perfect segue into what Vox Vegana is. Because that was actually the first piece that I composed for Vox Vegana. So we'll back up just a little bit. In the fall of 2019, well, strange things were brewing in the background, as we all know. I was in a wonderful, I think, 90-piece choir in Seattle, Washington. And it was a community choir. And you didn't have to be a professional or even audition to get into it, which was very nice. And they did performances to raise money for schools in Haiti, and all kinds of cool stuff. And it was the first time that I'd actually participated in a choir, since I was like in grade school, I suppose. When I couldn't necessarily really appreciate it, but yeah, that experience of being surrounded by all of these voices singing in harmony, it can't be beat. One of my favorite composers is a guy named Eric Whitaker, although I haven't listened to his work in a long time. But he talks about that experience too, the first time that he, reluctantly participated in a choir, and all of a sudden these voices are all around him, and he had, for lack of a better term, a spiritual experience. And it is. I think it's probably one of the ways that I connect to whatever that unnameable thing is with music, and particularly when you're singing with other people. Sidebar tangent. I saw a documentary once where they were talking about the release of oxytocin, which is a naturally produced drug in your body that gets released into your body when you hug people. Sometimes they call it the hugging drug. And apparently when you sing with other people, the amount that gets released into your body is 10 times as much as when you hug somebody. So So there's that spiritual experience, and there's that literal physical high that happens when you're
Wow.
singing with other people. Anyway, yeah, it was terrific. And we did, I think I did 3 performances with them, and one of them was in an event in Seattle that they call, oh, I'm gonna forget the name. Oh, Figgy Pudding. So Figgy Pudding, originally conceived as this like an all city a cappella event where they shut down downtown Seattle, and all these a cappella groups come out and they sing on the street to raise money for like homeless shelters. And so I'd never actually even been to one as a spectator, and here I was as a participant, and it was fantastic. I mean, I would say, I love all kinds of music. A cappella singing with other people, it has this uh, purity to it that you just don't get in any other um, particular genre. And it was Christmas, and I love Christmas, and we're singing these Christmas songs, and all of that was wonderful, except I would get invited, afterwards to go to a restaurant or before to go to a breakfast, and I didn't even want to have that conversation. I had not yet taken my Liberty Pledge, but I was already in a frame of mind where like I just didn't want to be sitting at tables where other people are consuming carcasses. Um, so I didn't go to these events, and or I should say these, auxiliary events around the choir. And then in January of 2020, right before the bomb dropped, I was like, you know what? I should start my own choir, and it could be a vegan choir. I don't even know what that means, but I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna start a vegan choir, and then my next immediate thought was like, what is vegan music? I don't even know what that is. And then it occurred to me that many years back, uh, I was working at a record store when an album came out by some organization called PETA or PETA or something. And and I was like, what is this? But it actually had some really good music on it. And unfortunately, I'm not going to remember the names of any of the acts. Although I know uh, Michael Stipe was one of them. Anyway, just some vegan musicians got together, uh, funded by PETA, and put together this wonderful compilation album, and it had some great songs on it. And so I was like, okay, so I can take from that. And then, I started doing some research, like, okay, who is a vegan artist? And it just turned out like Prince was a vegan. I had no idea. Wrote this brilliant song called Animal Kingdom, which, obviously was not a big hit. Otherwise, I would have heard about it. But it's also a great song. So I started investigating vegan music, and I started thinking about what it would mean to what how veganism uh, and activism in that realm would translate into music. Um, and shortly thereafter, I discovered a Facebook group called Vegan Music Makers, who are awesome. I love that group. Um, and I started my own sort of like Pacific Northwest Vegan Music Makers group on Facebook as well. But quickly, Vox Vegana itself became the center of my attention, and I managed to get my hands on a soprano, an alto, and a tenor, um, one of each. And I'm not exactly a bass, but I was like, okay, I'll try to sing. I can sing low notes, just not powerfully. So I was like, okay, I'll sing the bass parts. We had exactly one rehearsal as the 4 of us. Um, our tenor bowed out, and then it was just the soprano and I. And she's actually in the recording. She sang the soprano and alto parts, um, and I sang the tenor and the bass parts in the recording. Um, And then shortly thereafter, we were all told to stay in our houses. So I was like, okay, well, how does one actually run a choir over Zoom, you know? Or, yeah. So, and some people figured out how to do that. But like a lot of people, I took what I had going for me and sort of shifted it into this idea that it would just be this collaborative process that we would make recordings, um, and we would write these songs and we would have these vegan messages and go from there. And I kept the name Vox Vegana because I liked it. And Vox means voices. I actually I looked up the word Vox today because my wife was like, "What does Vox even mean?" It means voices. And then a couple of the examples given were Vox Humana, which is a setting on an organ, which means a human voice is supposed to sound like a human voice. And there was Vox Angelica. And anyway, so Vox Vegana obviously is the voices of the vegan.
I love it. Is that Latin?
Yes, although the language stopped evolving long before the term vegan was invented. So I would throw an A on it. Looks Latin now, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, I
Um,
love that name, and I love it. What you were talking about the music. I mean, just the benefits, the physical benefits of singing together. Because I think read at one time that your hearts synchronize when you're singing together too.
really? Oh wow!
Yeah.
Yeah, that would not surprise me at all. It's harmony of all kinds is a very beautiful thing. It's beautiful, um, and yeah. So I actually today, I don't know if you saw, I finally put up a page on. Yeah, you signed up for it. You're following it, and I was filling out the slogan, and like I've had various versions of the slogan before, and today it just like clicked. I was like, oh, um, voices of compassion and harmony, right? So even though we're not specifically a choir anymore, the idea still applies. Um, and people talk about giving voice to the voiceless. I know that's a big thing for Jane Unchained. Um, some people talk about how no, actually animals do have voices. It's just we don't listen to them, or some of us don't. But yeah, um, voices of compassion and harmony. That's where I'm at right now. So this group, one of the people that signed up for the group on Facebook, um, I saw her face pop up there briefly, and then she disappeared. And I like chased around. I was like, hey, do you want to be part of this group? Because I was like desperate for members, and she seemed really cool. And she's like, oh yeah, except I noticed you're in Seattle and I'm in Bhopal, India, so I don't know how that's going to work. And I was like, no, that's fantastic actually, because I've given up on the idea, at least temporarily, of trying to make this be an in-person thing. And I'm just looking for anybody anywhere who's interested in collaborating on the message of veganism in a musical capacity. Um, so this woman, Diksha Dixit is her name. She's actually the founder of Vegan Fest India, and she's doing like a million amazing vegan things out there. She's a brilliant cook and an artist, and she's got her own clothing line with her own designs, and yeah, just an amazing woman. Um, and we ended up co-writing a couple of songs, and we even have some songs where we're like singing duets together, and we've never met in person. So
Wow.
yeah, so the silver lining of not being able to work with people in person was like obviously that looking for whatever I can wherever I can, and ended up with all these amazing international contacts, some of which I consider to be good friends, people with amazing talents and doing amazing activism, and I get to collaborate with them. And Diksha is also a part of the collaboration on our flagship project, which is Camp Compassion. Um, one of three central members of a creative team, which also includes Mary Littlejohn, who lives in British Columbia. So yeah, we are a true. Even when I was still living in Seattle, we were, representing three different nations on one project. So
Well,
yeah, it's been a journey.
tell me more about Camp Compassion,
Yeah.
please.
Well, I don't want to give too many spoilers.
Yeah, don't tell us too much. Just tell a little bit, and so
Yeah.
because we really want to, get your music out, women, because your music is helping the animals and everything you're doing is. And so I love what a lot of people wonder, where's my place in this activism role, or what can I do? And then take the talents that you have, and then use the talents you have to make an impact. With your own energy and your own gifts. So that's beautiful. And I love what you were talking about, the voices and not being able to hear the voices of the animals. And it reminded me of Bianca de Roos, who was on here, an animal communicator. And when she finally could hear the animals, she went home and her dog said, "Oh, you can finally hear me." I thought that was so beautiful.
That's so
So
good. I would love to have that talent. I feel like I have a pretty good rapport with my companion animal who's sitting over here on the floor right now. Maybe he'll say hello at some point. But yeah, sometimes I'm just like, what is he thinking about? And he obviously dreams a lot too. And I'm like, what's he dreaming about? Anyway, yes, absolutely. Using the talents that you have for the cause. This is something that Colleen Patrick Boudreau talks about in her amazing book, The Joyful Vegan, which I wish I would have read earlier than I did, but it helped confirmed a lot of things that I was going through. And one of the big things for me was this, like, oh my, I think probably a lot of activists go through this thing where they're like, am I doing enough? Am I doing the right thing? How can I best serve the cause? And yeah, the truth of the matter is that vegans are all different kinds of people with all different kinds of talents. I recently joined a couple of different groups of vegan business owners, and it's very interesting to see, like, oh wow, I don't really consider myself a business person, and I certainly don't really have. I mean, in a way, Vox Vegana is. I mean, it's show business, right? But at this point, we haven't, we're not at that financial stage yet, other than the fact that obviously we're losing money day by day, just investing our hours and our other resources and making this happen. But yeah, the truth of the matter is that we all have different skill sets, right? Some of us are really great at getting people to come on interviews and podcasts and such. And I love vegan podcasts. I know several really great ones, including this one. Some of us are great at that face-to-face thing, and I'm just like, wow. When I watch people like Earthling, I'm like, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you made that equanimity in the face of that extraordinary adversity. And some people are great talkers. I don't consider myself a great talker at all. I mean, I'm good at rambling. For me, like, I do know the power of the word, the written word. And for me, that manifests in a lot, or used to manifest in a lot of blog writing. Like, that's where I put so much of my energy, in the latter half of 2020 and in 2021. And obviously a lot of lyric writing too.
yeah, well, the lyrics are beautiful that I've heard, and you have amazing talent. So wait, I want to hear a little bit about Camp Compassion, because we got off the course.
Right. Sorry. Like I said, I'm excellent at rambling. So Camp Compassion, the elevator pitch goes something like this. Teenager Keith Frankenberger is a typical American boy in a lot of ways, and his parents want him to learn some manners and have some sort of sense of responsibility and duty, because he just wants to sit around and eat junk food and play video games. Man, I mean, that sounds good to me too. I want to do that. But his parents take him to this camp. They drop him off at this camp, and his parents are like just a little bit absent-minded, right? So they don't realize, nobody realizes until he's getting checked into the camp after his parents leave, that it's a vegan camp. Spoiler alert. And hilarity and transformation ensues. So he ends up spending a week with a bunch of people that he would never be caught dead with otherwise. And there's jokes and there's a little bit of romance and a lot of edutainment. And currently, I don't know how it happened, but I think a lot of writers actually fall into this. I wouldn't necessarily even call it a trap, but it happens to people. I was just watching an interview with the creators of Wicked, the musical Wicked, and they were talking about how when they did their first reading, the first act, they only read the first act, and it was longer than the current run of the entire show.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we've got that problem going on. We recently did a reading as well, and we had to we didn't even play all the songs. We like little snippets of the songs, and the whole thing took 3 hours to read. Of course, you're reading stage directions and stuff too, so there's a little bit of added extra time. But we're at the point now with how do we scale this down? How do we make this still a very effective and enjoyable show, but do it a lot quicker, right? Because it's super long, and I ended up writing 34 songs for the show.
Wow.
Yeah, which is also way too much unless you're trying to do Hamilton, where everything's song, right? But and then I had to sit down and go, okay, which of these songs could we lose if we needed to? And I killed 11 of my babies, as they sometimes say. Although as I was doing so, my collaborator is like, no, we can't get rid of that song. I think they're probably going to fight to try to keep as many of them as possible. But, it's difficult for me to not feel pressure with this show, because it's true. I mean, as arrogant as it may sound, I want this show to change the world, and I think that it has that possibility. I really do. But so there's so much to consider in the process of creating this perfect work, and not the least of which is we don't want to bore people, we certainly don't want to sit there and just preach to people, because that will be boring, right? There's a lot of great information that needs to come across, but we need to figure out a way to do it so that your average pre-vegan audience is going to go, wow, this is really good stuff, right? I don't know about this whole vegan thing, but man, this is entertaining.
Yeah, that's true. And I like I mean, Camp Compassion is not it's not a threatening title,
Yeah.
It's a good title. So I'm excited about it, and definitely keep us updated. I was looking at some of the comments, and well, I don't think it's arrogant, for one thing, what you're saying. I think, oh my gosh, we want to get it, the communication in the best manner, right? To really be able to reach out without threatening, like you're saying, so people are receptive and it's engaging.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's wonderful.
One of the comments, we had a meeting after the reading, or the latest reading, and Diksha, our collaborator, and Bhopal, she made a lot of comments, and a lot of them were along the lines of this is a vegan show, right? Obviously, like that's the main thrust of what's going on here. We also have a lot of issues that we're covering as far as inclusivity. We have what I think is probably one of the most diverse casts, character lists, I should say, of any show that's ever been made, including people from all walks of life. Because vegans are not just one type of person, right? And just because you're vegan doesn't necessarily mean that you're, liberal or often it does, but it doesn't necessarily mean that, right? So we're trying to we're trying to we're trying to show through this with this through the writing and character list that veganism is about inclusivity. How can it not be? Because we're also including animals in our circles of compassion. I forget where I was going with this, but yeah, it's also. Oh, right. Diksha's comments were that like it's a musical. It's got to entertain people. We should have a little bit of mystery in there. We should have a little bit more romance in there. These kids at this camp. They're vegans, but they're also kids. So how are they being naughty? Maybe one smoker, right? Sneaking cigarettes somewhere. Maybe they sneak off to go skinny dipping and stuff. Like that kind of thing. And there was a little bit of that already in the book. But yeah, once we get it to a place where we feel like, okay, we've got all our bases covered, then we've got a dramaturg that's interested in going through it with us, who I discovered here in the UK, originally from British Columbia, now living in London, recently put on a show called Little Sausage, which I only found out about because I contacted the Vegan Society and I was like, hey, just want to let you guys know we're making this show called Camp Compassion, and it's going to be huge. And if there's anybody there that might want to get interested, if you know any like vegan producers, is that even a thing? Uh, uh, Send them our way. And they wrote back, well, actually, we just got done promoting this other show, this vegan musical, and my first reaction was like, oh man, I wanted to be the first. But then what's this other vegan musical? Little Sausage. It's what the authors are calling a verbatim musical, meaning that they did interviews with pre-vegans and turned their words into, with their permission, of course, into the libretto for the musical. I can't wait to see it. I think it might be touring again this summer.
And that's over there in the UK. Are you in the UK now? I never even asked you that.
Yeah. I live in the West Midlands now, a little town called Stafford.
Okay.
And yeah, so I ended up getting in touch with her and talked to her about doing some sort of collaboration. It turns out that she actually has like 15 common friends with our book writer, Mary Littlejohn. They're from the same town. And so she's like, yeah, I'd love to help you out with some dramaturgy. So turgy, anyway. So basically that means, once we get it to the place where we want it, we'll hand it off to her. She's going to read through it and give us some professional feedback as a writer who's already put on a musical and had some success with it. So that's exciting too.
Yeah, it's all exciting. And I'm looking at all these comments. Let me show Dina's comment. I agree, American, not arrogant. It's bold and brave. Yeah. See, I knew it. And Dina's a reverend. So if anybody knows, she knows. This is a holy word coming in now. And inspire people through their hearts and minds. Yes. And then Angela was asking earlier, she said, let's see here. I would welcome a deeper understanding as to the definition of abolition as it pertains to being vegan and or a vegan composer.
Yeah. Thank you, Angela. So, the term abolitionist is borrowed from the people in America, the United States, who were against the slavery of human beings. And it probably is still used today because, sadly enough, we still have human slavery in this world. We most certainly have animal slavery. Uh, so there are some vegans that consider themselves abolitionists. I'm against all kinds of slavery, including animal slavery. So that's where the word comes from, abolition. One of my friends was like, a vegetarian friend of mine was like, why not just Aaron Ahimsa? What's wrong with Aaron Ahimsa? And I was like, yeah, I like that. I don't know. I guess I wanted something a little edgier.
Yeah, that is more edgy, and that's kind of fits you better, right?
I'm all for Ahimsa, though. I mean,
Yeah.
on the better days, you know, I'm uh, a very peaceful person. I'm also, of course, anti all violence. I think that kind of, I mean, for me, like I'm going to contradict myself now because I said vegans are of all shapes and sizes, and it's true. I got into an argument once with somebody on Facebook calling himself a vegan who was just talking about like we got to kill these people for what they're doing to animals, and I was like, I understand that compulsion, but no, that's not how this works. That's not how we win, and and please don't do that. we went back and forth a while, and then I was like, veganism is about the end of all violence. Like we don't. It's this recognition that we don't need to be violent to be healthy and happy and human beings. Anyway, um, I'm off on a tangent again. Sorry.
Well, no, that's what it means to me too. Being vegan is about being peaceful and loving. I mean, vegan to me, it's just that whole energy of it is love. So if we're attacking other people, I feel like that goes against what this pure vegan word means.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's definitely about how can we communicate better in all areas, like you're doing with the music. You know, how can you use music to communicate
Yeah.
the vegan message to the world? So that's beautiful. And then let's see, I'm looking more at these comments. Definitely, we're going to give your website and information where people can reach out so we can follow you and get all this.
Great.
And where is the website?
So Vox Vegana doesn't have a website. We've got a presence on SoundCloud. We've got a presence on YouTube. We have a presence now on LinkedIn. No specific website at the moment. But yeah, I'll definitely keep everybody posted on that. I wanted to say too, one of the things that's been very cathartic for me about the story, again, without giving too much away, well, this is really just about the characters of Camp Compassion. So in Camp Compassion, Keith Frankenberger, he's kind of our main character, right?
He's kind of what?
His name is Keith Frankenberger. It was actually a name created by a vegan friend of mine. And I was like, oh, that's perfect. We're using that. It just kind of stuck. I think of him in two different ways. He's our audience proxy, right? So, you know, as the central character, he's the one that you're supposed to be able to relate to the most, right?
How old is he?
Probably 15, something like that. You know, they're all around that age.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was very important for us, first of all, to make sure that Keith Frankenberger was not just a punching bag, right? To be a very relatable character, he has to be the every boy, right? And the truth of the matter is that, like I said earlier, like I want to sit around and eat junk food and play video games. Like that sounds amazing. And you know, I don't necessarily want to always be polite and responsible. And the truth of the matter is, at least to some degree, like I was Keith Frankenberg. I wasn't always vegan, you know. I haven't always been polite. So yeah, very important for us to make sure that Keith is a relatable and even lovable character, right? And he does end up, you know, one of the vegan girls at the camp ends up kind of like getting interested in him too. And I won't give it away where that arc ends up, but that, that makes for fun drama.
Yeah.
And then there's another character in the show named Sid Vistopic. And he's an angry punk rock vegan kid who is, borderline nihilistic, like, and arguably like keeps Nemesis in the show, right?
Mm.
And shortly after I turned vegan and started opening up my eyes to the absolute nightmare that is the meat, dairy, and egg industry and animal testing industry, et cetera, et cetera. All I could do was scream about it. And like most people who start screaming about anything, unless they have, a television show sponsored by Pfizer or whatever, people start to ignore you, right? Because nobody likes to be screamed at. So I would use this metaphor often that it was like I was screaming into my pillow. I'd put these posts up on Facebook, and if I was lucky, somebody would have a fight with me, right? People would ignore me. And I was like, and I had a friend who's no longer a friend, and he was not vegan, who was like, trying to convince me that trying to tone police me, essentially. And that's something that we talk about in the show too. Like Sid's like, why do vegans get tone policed? What, Anyway, so Sid Vistopic, the angry punk rock vegan kid, is another. He's like another face of mine,
Mm.
And somebody that I think most people can relate to, even pre-vegans. Anybody who's got something that's very important to them that they feel they need to scream about, and other people don't want to listen to, right?
Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, we all get that anger, and so how are we going to use the anger? How can we channel it into a kind of a energy that's going to be released and heard? How do we do that? And so when did you first become a vegan, and how did that? Tell me about that part, the story there.
Well, yeah. So I mean, honestly, like this kind of all happened at the same time, right? I became a vegetarian when I was still in my teens, like still in high school, because I watched a movie that came out, I think, around that time, called Meet Your Meat.
That's what I watched, Meet Your Meat, and that was traumatizing. It was
Oh
only
my,
3 minutes.
yeah, I could not believe it. I still have images burned into my brain from that one. It was only 3 minutes.
I know. So do I. I still have one horrible that image I'm not going to share, but yeah, that I'll never forget from that 3 minutes.
Yeah, I've got the one as well. It just keeps coming back to me, and so of course people don't want to watch those videos.
Right.
Nobody wants to watch Dominion. Nobody wants to watch Earthlings. Nobody wants to watch Seaspiracy or Cowspiracy, because some part of them knows that it's going to be traumatic and they're going to have to make some sort of decision. Nobody wants to have that challenge. I didn't want to have that challenge, but there it was, right around the same time that I'm, dating girls in high school that are vegetarians as well. And I'm like, what's that all about? What's the whole point of doing that? And I didn't really understand it until I saw that show, that brief documentary. And I was listening to a band called Consolidated at the time, which is like this white boy hip hop industrial mashup. And like everything that they sang about was like, for lack of a better term, politically correct, they were on the right side about a lot of things, but also just vegetarians. And it wasn't until 25 years later that I realized, like, eggs and cheese are part of the meat industry, and it was actually my brother of all people that was like, arguably, meat and dairy are even worse than the meat industry. And I was like, huh, I never, yeah, I guess that makes sense. And then, you go online and you look up something like dairy is scary or eggs is scary. And in 5 minutes, you're like, oh, this is what I've been deceiving myself about. And even a couple years prior to my actual change of becoming a vegan, I was calling myself vegan because the woman I was dating was calling herself vegan, even though she was consuming copious amounts of honey. Earthling Ed, by the way, has a wonderful video on why vegans don't eat honey. If anybody's curious about that. So anyway, yeah, the long story short, too late, I became officially vegan in January or February of 2020.
And so what you saw, did you see a video on the dairy is what did it or what did it?
Honestly, at the time, with the best information that I could find, although there was a lot of information, and the more you dig, the more you know, and the more questions you often have. But at the time, the best theory that was being given to us about the origin of coronavirus was that it happened in this wet market, which led me to do more research about zoonotic diseases, and it just became clear to me that like there's really nothing valuable other than the money that these industries make about animal agriculture. Like, we're not only is it not beneficial to, well, obviously not animals, it's not good for the environment, and now it's creating pandemics. So that was, for me, that was the linchpin. That was when I was like, I can't do, not only can I not participate in that, in supporting that industry anymore, I need to start talking about it, and if I'm being fair, like, I was also just kind of inspired in the moment because a lot of different people were talking about a lot of things in 2020, and I was talking about a lot of things in 2022. It wasn't just veganism. I was driving around in my car with signs in my windows that said "Stop killing Black people," and that was 2020 was a dynamic year for a lot of causes, a lot of reasons, and Seattle in particular was a hotbed for a lot of that. But yeah, it was drawing those dots, and regardless of where you land at this point about the origins of the pandemic, the reality of the situation is that animal agriculture is a breeding ground for disease and destroying the environment and hurting animals and et cetera, waste of resources, hurting people. I mean, it's everything. I ended up shortly before I fell out of conversation with my pre-vegan friend. I wrote an article, which you can still find on my website, and it's long. It's like the longest thing I've ever written, probably even longer than anything I wrote while in college. And it's called "Veganism is for You," and basically it was my attempt at drawing the connections between any type of thing that you're involved, whatever your cause is, right? Whatever you're fighting for, there's a direct connection between that and veganism. And so being a vegan is a supplement for example, to being an environmentalist, right? Like a lot of us feel, and I'm one of those people, it's like, you can't really be an environmentalist if you're supporting an industry that is one of the worst, if not the worst, environmental destroyers on the planet, right? That cognitive dissonance is so deep. Uh, so yeah, I'm on a tangent again, rambling.
But you're right. I know. I see it too. I mean, I have a lot of people that are very environmentally friendly, but then they're not vegan and they're not even vegetarian. They're not getting the connection, you know. And so yeah, it is disturbing. But all we can do is just keep trying to educate, you
Keep
know.
trying to educate and stay connected with the fact that we were there as well. You know, there are very few of us, very few of us grew up with that level of awareness. We had to be we had to find it, you know,
Yeah.
and we had to and that part of the journey, you know, we went through that part of the journey. Being on the other side now, um, you know, like our character Sid Vistopic, you know, it's very difficult for him where he is in his stage with veganism to remember that he wasn't, to remember that he lived in that state of blindness as well, that state of cognitive dissonance. And there's just no way to know until you know. And then when you do, it's like, ah, why is everybody sleeping? Oh, right, I was sleeping too, right? You have to stay connected to that.
Mm.
Because I think that level of humility makes us better activists.
Yeah, because you've got to speak to them on their level, right? We can't be holding the moral superiority. We've got to get down to, yes, I remember what it was like, you know, and I love going to the barbecues. I mean, it's true. I love going to barbecues and eating ribs and doing all that, you know, and I loved going to Wendy's as a little girl, getting my little hamburger and the chocolate shakes and all that, right? So,
Yeah, to me,
yeah,
it
I
was
understand.
Big Macs.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
some of my fondest memories are barbecues, of course. You know, I was just thinking today. I was looking at a menu in a Chinese restaurant, and I was, of course, you know, what I'm looking for is that V or VE as they do. Is there anywhere? Oh, is there anything I can eat here at all? No, I guess not. Okay. Although some traditional Chinese dishes are, you know, accidentally vegan, and this is something that we actually cover in the show as well. Um,
Mhm.
but but I was having this memory of like, man, we used to. So I grew up in Oak Park, which is a suburb of Chicago, and one of my most favorite experiences was like going to Chinatown. We'd all pile in the car and go park in Chinatown, and it was like this, you know, almost like this fantasy land for me because you know everything looks different and everything smells different and the people look different, and I loved doing that, and I loved eating, you know, my wonton soup with beef and the egg rolls with shrimp and you know sweet and sour shrimp and sweet, like, you know, all of that stuff. Like it doesn't go away. Those memories don't go away, and that, you know, they change. They alter a little bit. Your perception of them changes a little bit, but you know, it's one of the things that makes it so difficult for people to make the transition is they believe they have to give something up, right? Unfortunately,
Mhm.
we live in a time now where you can make anything vegan, and it's really tasty. Like I'm eating better now than I ever have. I love the food that I eat. You know, when we get out, I've got lentils and chickpea curry sitting on the stove waiting for me when we're done. I can't wait. We we subscribe to something called Abel and Cole, and they do these meal kits, and they've got like 6 or 7 different, maybe it's like 8 different recipes per week that are all vegan. And so we just pick them out and they show up at our door and we cook them and they're all delicious.
Mm. Well,
Um, yeah.
I love chickpeas. I love chickpeas, and my dogs love chickpeas. All my dogs that I've had love chickpeas, and yeah, when you, it's not about what you're missing out on, because now you're. If we could explain it to people that way, you're not going to have to miss out on anything. You're going to bring all this newness of food, and food that actually has flavor. I mean, if we're really eating the whole food and the way that we were intended to eat, we're really going to be savoring with all the natural herbs and spices instead of this processed junk that's like cardboard, with all sorts of fake ingredients and the additives that are making us crazily addicted to with the sugar, salt, fat piled up, and then they cook it there and they send it to you. You recook it again and just adding on and adding on. It's awful, and then we're addicted and we don't even know why. It's really sad, and we've gotten away from. I just keep thinking about that video, the Garden of Eden, and what's the name of that one again?
The future is vegan.
The future is vegan. Yes, I know, I love it. So I keep thinking about that, but I'm looking at these comments now, and Trisha's here. I love Trisha. She's always watching. Trailblazing. Let me show this one. Is never arrogant, but rather courageous. Making positive change should be something to be extremely proud of. Hold your head high. It is exciting. Yeah, it's really freaking exciting. I can't wait for Camp Compassion. So as hard as it is to be a joyful vegan, you're right. It gets more positive exposure. As difficult as it is to express that sadness and anger. Yeah, and then we all feel the sadness. It's a process, I think, of really the inner work, healing yourself and knowing and acknowledging and feeling that sadness when it comes up. Because, we all have these ups and down days. And when the sadness comes, how do we deal with that?
Yeah, I remember somebody once said that, for better or for worse, as a vegan, you go out into the world, you represent all vegans. Now, that's not fair because it's not even true, right? But I don't represent all vegans because I don't agree with all vegans, right? It's not some sort of cult. We are individuals. You don't even have to hang out with other vegans, right? If you're a vegan, and you can still be a vegan. But the reality is that people, as soon as you say vegan, people have preconceptions, and they're expecting something from you that is based on those preconceptions, propaganda that they've gotten about vegans and veganism. So yeah, the reality of the situation is that the more positive experiences that people can have with vegans and veganism, vegan food, right? The more likely it is that they might have that shift, they might have that illusion. So yeah, I try to be a good vegan in that sense. Doesn't always work.
Well, yeah, and what you're saying reminds me about, then they'll be more open to learning more if they're seeing someone that is positive and has the food. And what about before you, when you were not a vegan, and then your girlfriend? I remember that story when she was a vegetarian, right? And you weren't, and with the rabbit's foot.
Oh yeah. So
some people feel like, oh my gosh, this person's never going to change, and they feel very hopeless. So I think this story will give them hope.
It's interesting. Sometimes it's the people that are fighting hardest to defend cruelty end up being some of the strongest advocates for animals in the end. You just never know. But yeah, when I was a teenager, listening to Consolidated,
the band,
yeah, protesting the Gulf War, writing an independent publication called SPEW, which stood for Stop Pretending Everything's Wonderful. dated 2 girls in high school. Well, I dated more than that, but at least two of them were vegetarian. And, you know, prior to that initial awakening, I guess you could call it, um, I didn't know anything about it. I'd heard the name. I knew that, I think I probably understood that vegetarians didn't eat meat, didn't know why, um, wasn't particularly interested in a burger made out of beans. You know, like,
That sounds horrible.
why would you eat a burger made out of beans? And yeah, um, uh, I went to school one day, and I used to carry around this rabbit's foot, and I wasn't the only one. Uh, Other people did too. And the reason that we even had these rabbit's feet is because they were given away as prizes at a local amusement park. Uh, when you had enough tickets, you could, trade them in for these prizes, these tickets that you won by playing skee ball. And I was like, oh, rabbit's foot, that's kind of cool. I don't know why I thought that was cool, um, but I did, and it was like this rabbit's foot that, and you don't really see the foot unless you pull the fur apart, and then you start to realize that it's like this used to belong to somebody. But there's that extraordinary amount of disconnection that's still happening. This programming that some animals are worthy and some of them aren't, right? Like if that had been a cat foot, right? Heaven forbid, right? But a rabbit foot, oh, that's okay. It's just a rabbit, right? And I carried this thing around with me. It was a keychain, and this one day, for some reason, some certain boys at a certain age tend to be, uh, antagonistic in many different ways. And I guess at least to some degree, I was one of those. And during lunchtime, I took this rabbit foot off and I sort of tossed it in front of my girlfriend at the time. And I didn't understand her reaction, which was a pretty strong reaction. She was disgusted by that. She was terrified by that. I was like, whatever, I was just joking around, being a Keith Frankenberger, right?
Yeah.
And now I totally get it. I mean, this job that I got here at a local movie theater, I didn't realize that part of my duties were going to be serving hot dogs to people. And on my first day, I'm shadowing somebody, and we had to go into the kitchen and heat up some hot dogs in a microwave. And then, I pressed the button and I sat there and I waited for it to, heat up, and then we took them out of the microwave. The person I was shadowing put on some gloves and cleaned off the thermometer and stuck the thermometer inside the hot dog. And, it was very recently that I watched Dominion, because I had been recommending it to people to understand where I was at and why I was screaming so much. I'm like, you want to understand me and what I'm going through? Watch this movie. It's that simple. And then we can have a conversation. I got to this point where it's just like, you're not going to understand what veganism is about until you're willing to bear witness. And this is actually the song that Sid wrote for the musical. It's called Bear Witness. And you can find this on our page as well.
Where?
On SoundCloud, you can find it.
On SoundCloud. Okay, that's where we need to go. But you said you had a website. Was that your personal website?
I do have my own personal website too, aaroncadams.com.
Yeah, because we're going to need all those links.
I'll give you links, yeah.
And I'm looking at Trisha's comments here.
Yes.
She's saying, we stopped saying we're vegan and we say we don't eat animals, and it definitely catches people off guard. Yeah, because people, again, are not making the connection. And she is also saying this. The disconnect is real for sure. I remember saying that I like my steak medium rare and a little bloody, but not connecting it to an actual living being. I mean, so do I. I loved it like that. I loved it like that, and I never got it. I even remember seeing I was in high school, and there was a deer in the basement hanging there, and I remember taking pictures of the deer and never feeling. I mean, I think I might have felt a tiny bit of compassion, but just completely not connecting with this living being. It's very strange now, but that's the journey. At that point, I wasn't able to grasp it. But that's one thing that the Earthling Ed talks about: all the little experiences that we have. And then all of a sudden, boom. It's like the brain gets it, and that's another. There's a great video, and it's the backward brain bicycle, and it shows how you think that you'll be able to jump on a bike and ride. This bike is backwards, so instead of turning this way, you turn that way, but your brain can't get it. And then it's after a certain amount of time, then all of a sudden your brain gets it, and then you try to ride the other way, and then your brain can't get that, the regular way. So it's just the way the brain works, and it's a great way to explain how all these little experiences add up, and then boom, you got it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely. I remember sometime, during that whole, when I was in the early stages of, researching and developing my veganism, I had this thought it became very interesting to me that we don't say we're having cow tonight, we're having beef,
oh,
steak. We don't say we're having pig tonight, we say we're having pork or bacon or ham, right? And then my immediate next thought was like, the more an animal is like us, right? In other words, the mammals in particular, the more we have to distance ourselves from the reality of what they actually are, right? So then, when you get to something like turkey or chicken, it's like, okay, whatever, they don't look anything like us or something, somehow it's easier to make that, to put up that blinders. Sorry, I keep noticing your companion is next to you there. I wanted to say hello. Who do you got next to you? Somebody next to you.
Oh, can you see him?
Yeah. Okay.
Louis.
What's his name?
Louis.
Oh, hello, Louis.
I adopted him about 2 months ago.
Oh my God, he's adorable.
Yeah, he's a good boy. He has heartworms still, but he was abandoned in a backyard, and maybe that's why he still was at the shelter, because of the heartworm. I don't know why they left him, but I mean, anyway, so he's doing good. He's got 2 more shots, and then we can play rough because he's supposed to be calm. He probably thinks, why am I with this dud that won't let me play? But anyway, I can't wait till we can play and run and hike.
Yeah, that's something about it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So.
yeah, I wanted to give this one anecdote, again, I'm doing that in a circuitous manner, so I'll just cut to the chase. Okay. Thanksgiving, also some of my favorite memories, because there's just family and there's this giant meal and everybody's eating everything, and again, it's one of those things where you can have all of that. There's this song in the show called "You Can Have Your Cake and Vegan Too," and one of the lines, I'm quoting myself now, one of the lines that I wrote for this song was, "The only thing that will be missing is the animal harm that you weren't wishing." Right? You can have cake and vegan too. But anyway, before all of that was happening, turkey on the table. Of course, it doesn't have a head, so you don't have to think about the fact that it was somebody, right? And then by the time it gets to your plate, it's just this, semicircular thing. What is it? It's meat. You don't have to think about it, right? This one year, my mom decided to get Cornish hens for us. So each one of us had an entire individual on her plate. And I couldn't do it. This is long before I was vegetarian. But I'm looking at this being on my plate, what used to be somebody on my plate, and I just, again, one of those experiences when you think back on your journey towards this awareness. That was one of those things,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah, that's very interesting. It's kind of, it would be, a good thing for all of us to kind of reflect on our path. What were the stopping points that we did think
Yeah,
about, and what can we look at? Well, how did we get to where we are? And that's really important to remember when we're talking to other people. you know so that's why it's so important to not forget, like you said, forget where we used to be.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so we're going to need to wrap this up, but we're having a great talk. Michelle
We are
St. John,
having a great time. Thank you.
uh, she's saying, wonderful interview, so engaging, great understanding of cognitive dissonance and the reason people are reluctant to change diet. Your vegan curry sounds delicious. I know it does. There's no better feeling when you connect the dots about animal exploitation. The truth really does set you free.
Yeah,
That's for sure. And Trisha saying, and I watched her because of you. The author of The Joyful Vegan talks about the cognitive dissonance that society conditions with us with the use of calling animals beef, pork, poultry instead of by their actual names. I know, and we're just so programmed. So it's, to realize that we've been programmed our whole lives, unless we're lucky, that as
yeah,
children, and that's what we learned. So that's why we've got to communicate on a better level. But yeah,
yeah. I just
so
wanted to say that author, both of those comments, brilliant comments. Thank you. And that book, The Joyful Vegan, Colleen Patrick Goudreau. She's got a podcast. She's written several books. Her podcast is great. I actually got that book on audio. I was driving around in my car listening to it, January of 2020. And it's she's got a great speaking voice, and I love audiobooks written by the author because like they know what they're trying to say, so when they speak it, it's like you get that extra meaning in it. And yeah, that
yeah,
book, I'd recommend that book to anybody, vegan, pre-vegan alike, because it's absolutely brilliant. Basically, she describes that journey, from pre-vegan to vegan, and like she was basically just spelling out what was happening in my life as I'm listening to this book. And in addition, she's talking about how you make that transition and not go crazy with your anger, and focus that energy into something positive. It's basically a handbook for how to be vegan, how to be an activist, right? Um, and yeah, can't recommend it enough. It's absolutely brilliant.
yeah, it is. And yeah, Trisha's saying, being a new vegan, it brought me to tears many times. Yeah, I saw her on YouTube. A few of her things. It was amazing. Yeah, I really loved. Well, her calmness, just like with all these other people, like Melanie Joy, and Earthling Ed, their acceptance and their willingness to keep going down this road, and doing the best to communicate. So understanding, so it's powerful,
It's
and
very
everyone doing their part, like you're doing. So how can um well, also, is there anything else you wanted to say? And tell us where we can find you and all your information.
yeah. Well, I would say, if anybody's, I still contend to this day, that the most powerful thing that you can do, um, to move you towards an understanding and an awareness, whatever that awareness you're hoping to achieve is to bear witness. When you see these things happen, right? Um, I sat and I watched the video of George Floyd,
Mm,
and I didn't want to watch that video. I felt that I had to. I felt, because somewhere in the back of my head, I'm like, okay, we have this strange things that's still happening in America, you know, 400 years after the fact. But I needed to see it for myself. And I think that there's nothing more powerful. There's nothing more powerful than bearing witness to move you to awareness. And so, um, bear witness. Uh, if you haven't, you know, Colleen and I differ just a little bit on the idea of bearing witness. She recommends that you do so on a regular basis as an activist. Um, I don't think I need to see another video of animal abuse ever in my life. Um,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I, I I feel like I've had enough of that for an entire lifetime. I believe that anybody who hasn't, even if you think you know, you don't know until you see. And when you see, then you understand. And that's really where a lot of people's journey has begun. So yeah, bear witness.
Yeah, and well, I agree with you too. Once you've seen it, I don't think you have to see it again because it's very hard to get up and you want to be powerful. So I mean, for me, if I was watching, let's just say Cowspiracy after this, it would be hard for me to coach someone, because I would be in that sadness, and I really got to be powerful if I want to coach people and help people. I already know, and so really feeding my soul, like watching your videos, watching your YouTube and listening to your music, and that feeds my soul, knowing that you're doing your work and we're all doing our work together, and that's how I can keep going every day, is connecting.
Yeah, that's true.
So
And the reality of the situation is that veganism can be and should be a joyful experience. And knowing that you're no longer participating in that nightmare is an incredibly liberating that you won't know until you do it.
that's very, very true. It is very liberating. I mean, that's a reason to celebrate every single day when you get up. It's like I've awakened, right? It's a resurrection.
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
Well, so tell everybody yeah, and Trisha's saying that I wish more non-vegans wanted to see the horror of what happens to animals instead of turning a blind eye. But now I've seen it, I can't watch it anymore. It literally debilitates me. Yeah, and
Yeah,
Trisha's working so hard to do her part. So really focus on what a great job you're doing, Trisha. She's really stepping it up, and she's yeah, very early on vegan. So I'm really thankful for all of you all, everyone that's watching us. And if you have any more questions, just post them in the comments, and then reach out to Aaron. He's on LinkedIn. And where can we find you? Where can everyone find you to
yeah.
connect?
So yeah, you can go to my website, which is aaroncadamsamuels.com. Cadam is like Adam, but with a C in front of it. AARONCADAMSAMUELS, all one word, .com. That's my main website. And then if you want to find Vox Vegana, like I said, we're on LinkedIn now. I just created a page on LinkedIn.
And YouTube.
We have one on YouTube as well. Search up Vox Vegana there. The logo is like two V's like that with a little X and a circle in the middle. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on SoundCloud. Yeah, we've got some lyric videos up on YouTube. You can see a couple of videos of me playing. I went to Pig's Peace Sanctuary in Seattle right before I moved out to the UK. Oh, that was so wonderful. And the owner of Pig's Peace Sanctuary let me play some music there. So I've got a couple of videos of me sitting and playing music for the pigs, which was amazing.
Where's that? I gotta see it.
That's
Where did you again?
from Vox Vegana.
On Vox Vegana. Okay.
Yeah.
Vox
channel.
VOX.
VOX.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I'm going to look for those and post them in the group, and always post in the group on Facebook. Please post all the information, everything. And look at this. I don't know who's saying this, but it's beautiful. Crying, joyful vegan tears right now, because I feel so united in camaraderie to you both and the whole vegan movement and community. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Wow, this is so beautiful. Thank you all. And Thank you, by the way. I adore your songs. Recently came across Back to Love. Beautiful. I only bear witness now when I feel disheartened about my progress for animals. It lights the fire in me to carry on fighting. Well, you all are so, everyone here is so beautiful. And I just feel so warm in my heart to be a part of this and to have this wonderful experience, this musical, musical experience with you, Aaron. So thank you so much. You're going to have to come back again when Camp Compassion comes out.
No, I'd
And
love to. That'd be great. Yeah. And
we'll,
yeah, thank you so much, everybody. Keep fighting the good fight. You know, it's happening. The world is changing.
it
For
is
the
changing.
better. It's happening. So keep it up. The future is vegan.
The future is vegan. Thank you so much, Sharon. I'm on a high now. So, all right, everybody. Thanks for watching and have a blessed day.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.